He found his hands disappearing. This scared him and he stood up abruptly. Then he saw himself lying on the bed. This startled him again. He was filled with confusion and fear. Suddenly, he saw a woman in the reflection of the glass. This time, he was almost scared to death. He quickly called for the doctor and nurse. The woman found him too noisy. With a snap of her fingers, the man's mouth was sealed shut. The woman's name is Goo Ryun. She is a grim reaper from the underworld, specifically tasked with helping those who wish to end their lives. Using various methods, she helps them abandon their suicidal thoughts. And she has a nemesis, who appears, and the screen fills with comments calling him husband. The man's name is Park Jong-gil, a man who specializes in guiding the spirits of the dead. But he's not our main character. Our main character is the man at the hospital just now, Choi Jun-woong. The reason Choi Jun-woong's soul left his body starts with his interview at the Heavenly Corporation. Hearing the interviewer's praise, he felt certain he'd gotten the job. The moment he left the company, he immediately called his mother with the good news, saying he was definitely going to be hired. His mother, who runs a noodle shop, heard this. He was so happy. He simply waived the bill for all the diners. Suddenly, he saw the company name, Choi Corporation. In a split second, he remembered the name of the other interviewee. His coffee suddenly lost its appeal. Then he understood. The person he competed with in the interview was the boss's daughter. A text message came to his phone. After opening it, it was the interview results from Swisher Enterprise. Clearly, he failed the interview. This made him furious, because he had interviewed at many companies, all ending in failure. That night, he drank with his friends. I suddenly received a call from my mother. Without a word, I picked up my phone and turned to leave. He came to the overpass alone. Then my mother called again. He still didn't answer. Thinking of my mother's happy expression earlier that day, he couldn't bear to tell his mother that he hadn't gotten the job. The anxiety of unemployment filled him with negative emotions about life. Suddenly, he saw a homeless old man approaching the overpass with an ashen face. He immediately realized something was wrong. He wanted to go help him, but he was also afraid of getting involved. So he turned and left. Just as the old man was about to end his life, he was embraced from behind. And this person was Choi Jun-woong, who had just left. Kind as he was, he chose to return. But the old man was still determined to die. As they struggled, a voice called out. And she is the Grim Reaper, Goo Ryun. Her mission this time is this older man. Because he was kicked away, Choi Jun-woong was very unhappy. While the two were arguing, the older man took the opportunity to climb over the railing. Seeing this, Choi Jun-woong hurried forward to stop the older man. Carelessly, they both fell down. Goo Ryun saw this and thought it was a real hassle. So she simply jumped into the river. Choi Jun-woong, who was in the river, saw a woman coming towards him. When Choi Jun-woong woke up again, he found that he was still alive. This made him very happy. The next second, he found his soul had left his body. Goo Ryun told him he wasn't dead yet, but that he wouldn't wake up for 3 years. Because of his own work mistake, there was no way but to give him a body first. Then they brought him to the underworld's directly managed company, the Lantern of Life and Death. He looked at the magnificent decor, unable to imagine such a life after death. The purpose of bringing him here was to ask the Jade Emperor how to judge him. This woman is the Jade Emperor. Seeing that the immortal boy found checking the book of life and death tiring, she handed him a bottle of vitamin A. He also said it's good for the eyes. Seeing programmers burning the midnight oil to write the rules of the world, she would hand them a bottle of nutritional supplement, saying this is good for the liver. The immortals also really liked her. Meanwhile, Choi Jun-woong was still awaiting the Jade Emperor's judgment. Suddenly, a bottle of shuangweiwei, a Chinese drink, was offered to his mouth. He hurriedly said thank you. The Jade Emperor was instantly stunned. There are people who don't even recognize themselves in the revolving lantern. Choi Jun-woong asked her if the Jade Emperor had a pair of horns. The whole series, he even uses sulfur fire to warm his back. The Jade Emperor told him to be quiet. Immediately afterwards, he walked towards the steps. He transformed in an instant, restored to his true form. Choi Jun-woong looked on in disbelief. This appearance was simply a symbol of majesty and solemnity.
주마등에 온 걸 환영합니다. 최준.
Choi Jun-woong was so scared he vomited. The Jade Emperor, learning of his kind heart, and because of the mistake made by the messenger from the underworld that led to his 3-year coma, gave him 2 choices. The first was to remain in a coma indefinitely. He can only wake up after 3 years. Second, he has to work for the Walking Lantern Company for 3 months. The complete series. He can wake up after 6 months, and it will also change his future destiny. The Jade Emperor thought, he certainly wouldn't refuse such a good job.
뭐? 안 해요?
He felt that working there would be absolutely miserable. It's better to enjoy these 3 years. There was nothing I could do. The Jade Emperor had no choice but to send his soul back into his body. In the mortal realm, he felt his mother fainting on the hospital bed because of him. He screamed for help, his heart breaking. But no one heard him. The Jade Emperor once again pulled his soul back to the lantern. This time, for his mother. He agreed. Then he took him to Goo Ryun's team, adding Choi Jun-woong to their group. Although they were extremely reluctant to take this half-human, half-soul fellow, but they had no choice. Soon they received their first mission, to rescue a girl with severe depression. At that moment, a girl was knocked to the ground by a crowd. Suddenly, a reckless motorcycle came speeding towards them. To avoid the pedestrians, he unfortunately fell to the ground. The motorcycle, due to inertia, was about to hit the girl. Time suddenly froze. This made Choi Jun-woong feel the power of the Grim Reaper. Goo Ryun was seen walking towards the girl step by step. She flicked her fingers. Immediately, with a snap of the fingers, time resumed its normal flow. The motorcycle also veered to the side. And this girl was their mission this time. The girl's name is Eun-fi. Since childhood, she had been ostracized by her classmates, even subjected to various forms of bullying. After graduation, she chose to become a manga artist. This time, the manga's theme is about bullying. This also stirred up her past memories. She's even been tormented by a recurring sound. The sound of a clicking ballpoint pen. Because the school bully told her, she had to laugh whenever she heard a ballpoint pen clicking. This series, during class, the school bully clicked her ballpoint pen. The teachers and classmates all felt she was very arrogant. Her best friend asked her to tell the head teacher, but the school bully found out. She told Eun-fi, if you're willing, I won't bully you anymore. But her implication was, they're bullying her best friend. Eun-fi hesitated for a moment. Seeing her best friend being dragged away, she rushed forward. Kind and righteous, she held up a ballpoint pen, and said she was wrong, pleading for them to let her best friend go. Perhaps it was fate. While she was working, she ran into the girl who had bullied her again. Anxiety and unease washed over her once more. Goo Ryun also discovered some kind of connection between the two, so she took the memory key given by the Jade Emperor, and while Eun-fi was asleep, entered her dreams. She also saw her tragic past. In the evening, they found that Eun-fi's depression level reached 92%, meaning she had suicidal tendencies. Sure enough, they found Eun-fi on the rooftop, attempting suicide. But Goo Ryun didn't stop her. Instead, she verbally provoked her, urging her to commit suicide, because only by experiencing death, only then will she understand the beauty of the world. At this time, Eun-fi's depression index has reached 100. At this moment, she is standing on the balcony. Turning around, she tells Goo Ryun, she also wants to live happily, but her smile is wrong to others. All these years, no matter how hard she tries, she still lives a very unsuccessful life. After saying that, she jumped. During her descent, she recalled her life. The feeling of getting her first job, happily chatting with her colleagues, and even her unrealized travel dreams. Suddenly, a hand caught her. It was Goo Ryun. After landing, Goo Ryun told her to learn to fight back against life. It was them who were wrong, not you. So you need to cheer up. Don't let anyone hurt you. After saying that, she went to find the perpetrator. She made the school bully apologize to Eun-fi. How could she, incorrigible as she is, ever agree? So Goo Ryun grabbed her hair. She choked her neck and pinned her against the wall. Then she threw her into a dream. In this dream, he experienced everything Eun-fi went through during the bullying. The man learned that his classmate had suicidal tendencies. How could nothing I can do? My classmate had no choice but to call the police and report him for trespassing. Back at the police station, Choi Jun-woong repeatedly stated his identity information, but that idea was immediately rejected. Suddenly, Representative Lim thought of a good idea. That was to disguise themselves as the Godfather and find their classmate, Namgung. He also said that they were there to deliver good news. However,
생각보다 굉장히 예리한 사람입니다.
그런 거.
seeing this, Choi Jun-woong scolded them. It's the modern age, why are you still preaching? So Choi Jun-woong used his phone to send a message to Namgung. He said some encouraging words. Namgung ran straight out the door. They followed closely behind. But while running, they lost him. They had no choice but to split up. Soon, Choi Jun-woong discovered Namgung in his hospital room. Namgung looked at his former friend lying there. He felt very distressed. He felt that the text message wasn't sent by Choi Jun-woong. Choi Jun-woong tried to go over and comfort Namgung. As he approached, his own body in the hospital room suddenly started convulsing. Seeing this, Namgung rushed into the hospital room as well. Choi Jun-woong outside the door was also extremely distressed. Fortunately, Park Jong-gil, who had come to the hospital to collect the deceased souls, quickly pushed him aside, away from the true body, thus saving his life. After leaving the hospital, Beer Fresh found Namgung again, and even stole his beer. But what Namgung saw was still the face of a greasy middle-aged man. He asked him why he kept following him like a ghost. Choi Jun-woong, as usual, inserted a straw into his beer. Namgung noticed the middle-aged man and his friend shared the same habit. He slowly lowered his guard. He recounted his experience. He studied day and night, neglecting food and sleep. But in the end, it all came to nothing. This seeing Namgung in such pain, he didn't know what to do. Finally, Namgung expressed a desire to eat fried chicken. Goo Ryun saw that Namgong's depression index had reached 85. She felt she couldn't wait any longer. So he asked Choi Jun-woong what year the fried chicken he mentioned was from. Choi Jun-woong told him it was from 20 years ago. Then Goo Ryun found the Jade Emperor and borrowed a time-traveling vehicle. The Jade Emperor initially refused. But when he heard Goo Ryun was going to look for fried chicken,
치킨? 치킨.
he surprisingly agreed. They arrived at the underground parking garage. Choi Jun-woong was excited to see so many luxury cars. This made him very excited. But in the end, Goo Ryun chose the least conspicuous little red car. Wow. This caused Choi Jun-woong to complain. Then they His father cheerfully sent him to school. But the teacher told his father that the tuition was due.
죄송합니다. 조만간 드릴게요.
His father looked at his son with some difficulty. So the boy was kicked off the school bus. The boy cried loudly. He insisted on going to school. His father knelt down and told him, "Tonight, I'll buy you your favorite fried chicken." The boy then showed a smile. Did Goo Ryun and Choi Jun-woong dare to get out of the car? Their time travel to 20 years later was to save this little boy. Because on this day, 20 years later, he had suicidal thoughts. The only thing that could cheer him up. Maybe it was the fried chicken that my father bought when I was 6 years old. So they had no choice but to travel back 20 years to find fried chicken to complete their mission. But Nandong doesn't know which family it's from. He only knows that his father bought it. On the other hand, the father calls the companies he interviewed with earlier, but none of the companies want him. Then they drive to the hospital. Goo Ryun also sees Nandong Hyun worrying about his wife's medical expenses. Nandong is in the ward with his seriously ill mother. His mother says today is his birthday. At this time, Dad walked in. Mom knew the medical expenses were high, so she lied and said she was better. Dad held her hand and said, "Don't worry. The money matters are all settled. Let her recuperate well in the hospital for her son's sake." 11524 just left the hospital. It started raining heavily. Dad carried Nandong into the car. Then he started to clean up the wet socks. After he finished all this, he found that Nandong had disappeared. He ran to the other side of the car. Only then did he discover that Nandong was picking up socks that had fallen in the rain. He knew these socks could be sold to pay for his mother's medical treatment. After they returned to their rented apartment.
아버지는 빛이 이제 이해가 가요.
At this moment, the father suddenly sped up. They also noticed something was wrong. Goo Ryun quickly remembered the life insurance he saw in his car. He immediately understood what was happening. So they hours to stop time. Only then did you escape a disaster. Choi Jun-woong pulled him out of the car. But Nan Puxian still insisted on dying. Goo Ryun slapped him directly. Let him sober up. Nandong Sen calmed down and told his story. It turns out his company went bankrupt. His debts grew like a snowball. Only through death could his wife and child receive the insurance money. His wife could then afford medical treatment, and his son could eat fried chicken. Goo Ryun told him, "You think you're dead? Will your wife and children be able to live happily ever after?" But this is the only way he has now. Due to time constraints, they need to find fried chicken as soon as possible. So Choi Jun-woong stepped forward and told him that he would go buy fried chicken for him. He told him to think carefully about how to live on. Then they searched the streets for fried chicken. But all the fried chicken places were closed. Suddenly, they saw a shop still open ahead. It was the Walking Lantern Fried Chicken Shop. Perhaps it was destined from the beginning. Goo Ryun only then realized that when she said she was going to a fried chicken place, Jade Emperor readily agreed, no wonder. But when they went inside, the room was empty. Only the ingredients for fried chicken were prepared. Having no other choice, they decided to do it themselves. Goo Ryun chopped up the hen. Choi Jun-woong fried the chicken beside her. After about 10 minutes of preparation, 2 portions of fried chicken were finally ready. Then Choi Jun-woong found 2 more sets of clothes. So, reluctantly, Goo Ryun put on the Donald Duck costume, and with a serious face, celebrated Namgung's birthday. Choi Jun-woong also handed Namgung the fried chicken. Meanwhile, 20 years later, Namgung climbed onto the rooftop to commit suicide again. Luckily, director Lim stopped him again. At this time, Choi Jun-woong and Goo Ryun also arrived with fried chicken that time traveled from 20 years ago. Namgung looked at the note on the fried chicken. He remembered what his father had told him.
실패는 다시 하는.
Goo Ryun also told him, there are no hopeless situations in the world. Only people who are hopeless about their situations. Namgung picked up the fried chicken and began to eat. Representative Lin also realized then that he wasn't thinking about suicide. But as he ate, he started to cry. Choi Jun-woong asked him why he was crying. It turned out that Choi Jun-woong's fried chicken was so bad it made him cry. He even took a bite himself.
2010년 7세 여아 성폭행 2017년 5세 남아 성폭행 그리고
Goo Ryun looked at this inhuman scum and punched him again hard. He begged Goo Ryun to spare his life. Tell him that you've been dead for a long time, Goo Ryun. Then another hard kick. And tell him that he will definitely be sent to the most terrifying hell. Then another kick. It turns out Goo Ryun is a Grim Reaper. She was once a member of the escort team. Suddenly, she received a call from team leader Park Jong-gil. Afterwards, the two of them went to the rooftop. Park Jong-gil told her that there would be a spirit needing to be guided soon. At that moment, a man came to the rooftop. It turned out he was seeking death. Park Jong-gil told her to wait until the man jumped to his death. Then she would take his spirit back to the underworld. The moment the man jumped, a hand grabbed him. It was Goo Ryun, unable to bear watching a life disappear before her eyes as she tried to pull the man up. Park Jong-gil told her to let go. At that moment, the man didn't want to die anymore. He hoped Goo Ryun would save him. Just like that, a person who should have been saved died right before his eyes. Goo Ryun strongly disapproved of Park Jong-gil's methods. From then on, they became bitter rivals. Goo Ryun also formed her own independent team. She was responsible for saving those struggling on the brink of death, while Park Jong-gil continued to guide the souls of the deceased. That day, his team member Choi Jun-woong was harassed by a female ghost. But to outsiders, he was the only one acting foolishly, gesticulating there. The female ghost also explained her intentions. The female ghost's name was Na-ing. She died in a car accident the previous day. Seeing her boyfriend's sorrowful appearance, she wanted to comfort him, but she passed right through his body. At this time, the extradition team came to extradite her. She hoped to say goodbye to her boyfriend. But Park Jong-gil didn't even give her a glance. Just as she was being sent to the Kaleidoscope company for trial, she accidentally saw Goo Ryun and the others. Na-yang heard that they were a group dedicated to preventing suicides. She felt that they could help her fulfill her wish. So, while they weren't paying attention, he ran out. The kind-hearted Choi Jun-woong, hearing his plight, brought her before Goo Ryun. But Goo Ryun only helps the living. The dead are under the jurisdiction of the Gongdo group. To avoid unnecessary trouble, he was about to call Park Jong-gil when he suddenly received a mission. This man's negative emotions are increasing wildly. They also understand that Na-ing wouldn't go to the underworld because of him. It turns out Na-ying's boyfriend couldn't accept her death, so he took a large amount of sleeping pills and attempted suicide. Luckily, he was saved. But he still refused to eat or drink, seeking death. Na-ing hopes to see him one last time. This might ignite his will to live. Goo Ryun also hesitated. This would make her an enemy of the extradition team. Just then, the extradition team arrived. Na-yang, startled, ran away. They asked Goo Ryun if she had seen the ghost on the tablet. Goo Ryun said she had, but she didn't know which way she ran. Just as they were about to leave, team leader Park Jong-gil approached.
안 그렇습니까?
Goo Ryun didn't want to hide anything either. So she said that Na-yang was closely related to the person she was trying to save, and therefore couldn't be handed over for now. After hearing this, Park Jong-gil was very angry.
내가 아는 넌 말수가 적었던 것 같은데 쓸데없이 말이 많아졌구나.
할 말을 했어.
Park Jong-gil warned Goo Ryun, if you keep hindering their work, then don't blame me for being impolite. After saying this, he took his subordinates to search Na-yang's soul. Meanwhile, Na-yang arrived at the rented house where she lived with her boyfriend. The cause of death and the escort team members outside also located the place. The Jade Emperor told Goo Ryun that he had misused his powers in the mortal realm. She prevented a car accident that was about to happen, disrupting the natural order. So, she was punished. Her magical abilities were forbidden for a week. The next day, they received a special mission. They needed to save a man who wanted to commit suicide. So Goo Ryun dressed up as a doctor and found the man. Sure enough, she found a bottle of sleeping pills in his pocket. The man said he was responsible for his girlfriend's death. Her restless heart tormented her every day. It turned out his girlfriend had died in a car accident. But Goo Ryun didn't think so. To get to the bottom of the truth, they found the spirit of the man's deceased girlfriend. Unexpectedly, they ran into their own arch-rival who was trying to steal the ghost. Because Goo Ryun was forbidden from using her powers, they could only run. Representative Lin stopped them. It's a good thing Representative Lin died early. His magical powers were quite superior. He KO'd them in a few rounds. In the car, Goo Ryun asked the ghost why her boyfriend felt like he was the one who killed her. The ghost explained the reason. It turns out that my boyfriend, Yojin, lost his mother at birth. So every year on his birthday, his father particularly hated him, feeling that he had brought about his wife's death. Unable to accept his wife's passing, his father also committed suicide, leaving Yojin all alone. Luckily, his uncle appeared. They took him home. Looking at this luxurious children's room, he couldn't believe he would be living here. At dinner, his uncle and his family would actively serve him food. This was the first time he felt the warmth of a family. And they also celebrated his birthday, a birthday he had never had before. Yojin soon grew up. Unfortunately, his uncle's family of 3 were involved in a car accident, left him forever. From then on he became an orphan again. Looking at the family portrait in the photo, I also feel like I have killed my uncle's family. So he picked up a knife, preparing to end his life. He suddenly heard a song on the radio. The lyrics seemed to be written for him. This song healed him, making him abandon his suicidal thoughts. Therefore, he embarked on a musical journey. Soon after, he met the girl he liked, who was the deceased ghost, Na-ing. They quickly fell in love. That day, they were driving on the road. Because the driver in front of them dozed off, they had a car accident. That's how Na-yang died. He survived. Na-yang's parents blamed him, saying he killed their daughter. The repeated pain of losing loved ones made him feel like an ill-omened person. At that time, Goo Ryun and the others brought Na-yang's spirit to the hospital, but found that Eugene wasn't in the ward. Just as they went to look for Eugene, Park Jong-gil of the escort team appeared. Goo Ryun, having lost her powers, had no choice but to flee with them. But they couldn't escape Park Jong-gil's clutches. After they escaped the hospital, they discovered Na-yang's spirit was gone. At that moment, Na-yang was surrounded by Park Jong-gil. Just as he was about to take Na-yang to the underworld, Director Lim appeared to buy Goo Ryun time. He had no choice but to confront Park Jong-gil. But how could he be Park Jong-gil's opponent? A few rounds left him completely defenseless. Just then, Goo Ryun appeared to save Eugene's life. He had no choice but to sign a 2-hour contract with Park Jong-gil. But once he signed this, even the Jade Emperor has no right to interfere. This means he must obey Park Jong-gil's orders for 2 hours. Fragrance turns to ashes and smoke. At this time, Eugene was standing on a high platform at the hospital. Luckily, Goo Ryun appeared then. But no matter how Goo Ryun tried to persuade him, he still believed he had killed his girlfriend. At that moment, Goo Ryun also revealed the truth. It turned out that during the car accident, Na-yang deliberately swerved the steering wheel towards him. That's why he survived. After learning this, he felt he wasn't worth Na-yang doing that for. He leaped. He jumped. Luckily, Goo Ryun caught him in time. To give him the motivation to live, Goo Ryun risked turning to ashes and let Eugene see Na-young. Na-young said her death was not his fault and told him to live well for her. Under Na-young's guidance, Eugene untied the knot in his heart. At this time, Goo Ryun also discovered that Eugene no longer wanted to die, but because she used her magic during the forbidden period, she also fell weakly. A few days later, Yeojin didn't give up on herself. Carrying Na-young's love and hope, she sang of the beauty of the human world. This old man is going to die tomorrow, but he chose to hang himself today. Meanwhile, the Jade Emperor also received news of the old man's suicide, because the old man was a national hero in his youth. He sent Goo Ryun to investigate the reason for the old man's suicide. He also asked her to help him fulfill his last wish. Due to the urgency of the situation, following the address provided by the horse lantern, she arrived at the old man's home, but found the room empty. Then they saw the house in disarray. They decided to help the old man clean the room, because a tidy room can improve one's mood. Since they couldn't find a room, neither of them wanted to go by one. There was no other way. As the newcomer, Choi Jun-woong naturally became the errand boy. As Choi Jun-woong came out of the convenience store, a rag picker happened to be passing by.
엄마, 왜 저 할아버지는 쓰레기를 가는 거야?
공부를 열심히 안 해서 그래. 저 할아버지처럼 안 되려면 너도 공부 열심히 해야 돼.
Choi Jun-woong looked at the woman with disdain. How could she raise her child like that? Kind Choi Jun-woong hurried forward to help the old man push his cart. The old man refused. Then he suddenly realized that this was the suicidal old man they were looking for. Lee Young-cheon? That's it. Choi Jun-woong helped the old man pull his cart. He quickly discovered that the area where the old man lived had been demolished. Curious, he asked why the old man didn't leave. The old man said he had lived there his whole life. He had become attached and didn't want to move. Suddenly, several thugs ran out from the intersection. It turned out they were urging the elderly person to move quickly. And they even laid hands on the elderly person. Choi Jun-woong couldn't stand them bullying the elderly like that. So he fought with them. When they returned, Choi Jun-woong was beaten black and blue. Goo Ryun quickly guessed what had happened. The elderly person asked them who they were. The old man arrived, quite surprised. He looked at Choi Jun-woong with some suspicion.
저는 아닙니다. 저는 아직 아닙니다. 반반이.
At this time, Representative Lim told him again that he would die tomorrow. At these words, the old man's expression became somewhat flustered. It turned out that the old man, due to prolonged exhaustion, had developed an acute illness. He didn't even know this himself. Goo Ryun followed the old man to the room. She asked him if there was anything he wanted to do, and she would help him achieve it. Then the old man revealed his reason for wanting to commit suicide. It turned out that he had seen his next-door neighbor die. Their body had decayed before anyone discovered it. So he wanted to find a place to hide. To quietly leave this world, Goo Ryun asked him about his last day. Don't you want to spend it meaningfully? The old man said he just wanted to spend his last day as usual. His last day. So they accompanied the old man to collect trash. But they found someone driving a car and competing with them for trash. After several tens of minutes, the old man finally saw many empty bottles and cardboard boxes. He even said his luck was so good on his last day. After saying that, he started picking up the trash. The others also squatted down to help. The old man said, "Don't get your hands dirty." Goo Ryun said, "Trash is dirty. But some people are dirtier than trash." Soon they filled a whole truck. They went to the recycling center to sell it. The stingy boss even intentionally gave the old man less money. Goo Ryun was about to step forward to confront him, but was stopped by the old man. The old man then pulled out some money from his pocket and handed it to the boss. It turned out that he knew the boss was also struggling financially, so he wanted to help him on his last day. Afterwards, they pushed the cart back. Evening came quickly. Several people sat under a large tree. The old man said he deeply regretted a decision he made. Otherwise, he wouldn't have remained unmarried his whole life. It turned out that in 1950, he was preparing to go to the battlefield to defend his country. As the saying goes, a mother worries when her child travels far. His mother was afraid he would get hurt, so she wouldn't let him go. But he said that defending the motherland is the duty of young people. Before leaving, he knelt down and paid his respects to his mother. This departure changed the course of his life. This old man is no simple fellow. Even when he goes out to collect scrap, he has the help of grim reapers pulling his cart, even at the very end of his life. Even the gods of death mobilized en masse. Even the Jade Emperor himself came out to greet him. The old man's name is Lee Young-cheon. In his youth, he was full of patriotic fervor and wanted to join the army. He left his mother, who had raised him for over 20 years. He rushed to the battlefield, but the war was far more brutal than he imagined. The air was thick with the stench of corpses and dust. Watching his comrades fall one by one around him made him incapable of feeling affection for anyone. Until one day, he met a comrade named Lee Dongja. The two opened up to each other, talking about their hometowns. Yeong-chuan took out a photo of himself with his mother. He said he would go home to see his mother when the war ended. Lee Dongja said he needed to eat more, grow taller before seeing mom again. Suddenly, a roar echoed through the sky. Immediately, the sound of gunfire erupted nearby. The soldiers quickly engaged in a life or death struggle. The artillery fire was merciless. Lee Dongja's leg was blown off. Seeing this, Yeong-chuan loudly called for a battlefield medic. As soon as the war ended, he hurried to find Lee Dongja. They suffered heavy losses in that battle. Finally, he saw Lee Dongja, who had lost a leg, in the corridor. He shouted loudly. But Lee Dongja's first words upon waking were,
너 때문에 나 이렇게 사느니 죽는 게 낫다고. 아 꺼져. 다시 내 눈앞에 나타나지 마.
Yeong-chuan didn't understand. Could a life be worth less than a leg? As soon as the war ended, he returned home. only to find that his mother had passed away. His house had also been demolished by the government. He never got to see his mother one last time. So he wanted to continue his studies. But his hands trembled uncontrollably, even when he slept at night. The cries of the battlefield echoed incessantly in his mind. He had no choice but to give up his studies. He chose a manual labor job. But when he heard the sound of hammering nails, images of gunfire kept flashing before his eyes. This plunged him into despair. These lingering effects of the battlefield completely changed his normal life. For survival, he was forced to pick up scrap on the streets, seeing others in pairs. And considering his own unstable mental and physical state, he gave up on marriage. Just like that, picking up scraps became his whole life. They listened to the old man's story. I felt so sorry for him and his life. Then the old man suddenly stood up. He said he was going for a walk. The old man sat on the steps. Then Goo Ryun came out too. She sat beside him and asked what he was thinking about. The old man said that if he hadn't joined the army back then, he probably would have lived a happy life. Now, all that's left is regret and a humble existence. Hearing the old man's story, Goo Ryun said she wanted to show him something. Then, with a snap of her fingers, she took the old man to the highest point in all of Seoul, wanting him to see the country he had protected. And she told him, if it weren't for your sacrifice, there wouldn't be the people we see today. The old man looked at the bustling Seoul night scene. He felt a renewed sense of pride. When he returned to the steps, the old man was very grateful to Goo Ryun. He allowed him to understand, on his last day of life, that his sacrifices were worthwhile. Just as the two were preparing to go back, Choi Jun-woong came bouncing and jumping. It turned out he had uploaded the matter of the old man searching for Lee Dongja online. It drew much attention from netizens. Lee Dongja was quickly found. Seeing Lee Dongja's family living happily, the old man felt very happy. Choi Jun-woong told the old man that Lee Dongja was also looking for him. I'm grateful for his life-saving grace all those years ago. To allow the old man to pass with dignity, Goo Ryun asks Park Jong-gil to escort the old man with the utmost respect. Meanwhile, a few thugs find the old man again. Just as they're about to attack, Goo Ryun returns from her flashback. She tells Choi Jun-woong to take the old man inside first. I'll handle them myself. After saying that, he put on the death gloves. They even teased Goo Ryun, asking how old she was.
420살.
뭐? 20살?
김어원님? 420살이라고?
The old man's condition worsened again at this time. He worried whether Goo Ryun would be in danger alone outside. Representative Lim told him, it's those punks who are in danger. Outside, Goo Ryun was beating up those punks like they were children. He knocked them all down with one blow. In less than a minute, he KO'd them all. They ran away, scared out of their wits. The old man was now too weak to speak, although he had known his time was near. But at this moment, Choi Jun-woong felt immense pain. He went outside for some air, tears streaming down his face. Goo Ryun, let him collect his thoughts before he comes in. Goo Ryun, don't leave yourself with regrets. Goo Ryun, then she went inside. Just then, Park Jong-gil swaggered in. Seeing Choi Jun-woong's pathetic state, he taunted him, saying even in his final moments, he can't face it. What else can I do? After saying that, he went inside, leaving Choi Jun-woong with a wronged expression. Park Jong-gil approached the old man, telling him they had met during the war. It turned out that Park Jong-gil had guided lost souls during the war, and he saw his bravery. So this time, he wanted to, at the last moment, walk with him to the end. At this moment, outside the door, hundreds of underworld messengers came to see him off. Even the Jade Emperor came in person to greet him. The Jade Emperor came to the room, looking at the old man's kind face, thanked him for protecting countless lives. Now all we can do is quietly see him off.
그대의 영혼은 그대가 살아온 삶의 값어치 그 이상으로 복을 받는.
After saying that, the old man peacefully passed away. The old man's soul arrived at the door, seeing so many people outside to see him off. The Jade Emperor stated, without you, there would be no lantern slides as we know them today. Then, under everyone's silent mourning, the escort team took the old man's soul away. Thus, he left this world, and arrived at the River of Life. The old man also regained his youthful appearance. He saw his mother's spirit, making up for more than 40 years of regret. This embrace, he had waited half a lifetime for. A 200-gene girl's efforts to lose weight. She lost weight by vomiting every day. Just like that, one vomit. For over 10 years, she went from 200 gene, approximately 440 pounds, to 70 gene, approximately 154 pounds. But she still wasn't satisfied, because she wanted to be as thin as a lightning bolt. At night, when she was unbearably hungry, she secretly ate a piece of bread. The next second, she ran to the bathroom, and spat out the bread. The reason she kept trying to lose weight was because she saw herself like this in the mirror. This also gave her suicidal thoughts. Meanwhile, the Zoetrope received the girl's suicidal message, because Yama sent a message to the Jade Emperor, constantly complaining that the space in the underworld was too small. The Jade Emperor simply established a crisis team, specifically to rescue those who wanted to commit suicide, helping to reduce the underworld's population. This time, the Jade Emperor sent Goo Ryun to save the girl Shin Yina. So they disguised themselves, and went to the girl's company for an interview. Finally, under duress from the three of them, I successfully entered the company. On my first day, the company encountered a problem. That overweight girl wrote the wrong date for the exhibition. My boss yelled at her. He said she just eats all day. She's as fat as a pig. She can't do anything right. Shin Yina heard the decision and decided to help Xiao Pang. She asked about the time and learned that there was less than an hour left until the event. So she prepared to go and help Xiao Pang. Meanwhile, Goo Ryun and the other two, in order to get closer to Shin Yina, decided to go as well. After arriving at the exhibition, the makeup artist said that one model was missing. Xiao Pang hesitated upon hearing this. Let me do it. The teacher saw her figure and immediately refused. She said that she was still a model for display purposes. Suddenly, she turned her gaze to Goo Ryun. She felt that this person was quite good. Shin Hee-na also asked Goo Ryun for help. In order to get closer to Shin Hee-na, she agreed to the SP. But afterwards, I'll have Shin Hee-na treat me to a meal. Shin Hee-na readily agreed. At the exhibition, Goo Ryun, who already possessed an unparalleled beauty, made the event a perfect success. Afterwards, they went to a restaurant to eat. Goo Ryun noticed that Shin Hee-na, although she kept saying how delicious everything was, her hands kept cutting the steak. But she put the fork back down before it reached her mouth. In the end, she only ate a small bite of mushroom. Afterward, they couldn't understand why she was still trying to lose weight when she was already so thin. The next day at work, Xiao Pang gave Shin Hee-na some snacks. They were also observing Shin Hee-na's reaction. But when Shin Hee-na turned around, she mistook the chubby boy for her past self. She immediately knocked over the snacks. She also said a lot of harsh words. Goo Ryun witnessed all of this. During the break, she went to the coffee shop alone, hearing others gossiping about her.
겁나 많아서 친구 바로 장 부러지겠다. 저걸 하자. 아유, 나는 저렇게 말하면 싫다.
These voices pushed her to the brink of collapse again. Goo Ryun and the two others who had been following her quickly discovered her depression index had reached 95. The company organized a dinner party that evening. Seeing that she wasn't eating or drinking, her superior said,
그러니까 저렇게 말랐지. 여자가 그렇게 마르면 복 없어 보인다? 어? 그만 좀 먹어라. 하여튼 여기 지나치게 빵빵.
and also said Goo Ryun's figure. That's the most standard way to be liked. Choi Jun-woong shoved the vegetables directly into his mouth, stuffing his mouth. But Shin Hee-na, having heard those words, experienced another hallucination. She ran off, leaving her bag behind, completely distraught. Goo Ryun and the other two rushed after her, but found she was gone. Representative Lin pulled out his phone. He discovered her depression index reached 97. That means she'll commit suicide tonight. They had no choice but to split up and act. At this time, Choi Jun-woong spotted Shin Hee-na. By the time he ran over, she had already taken a taxi and left. Soon, Shin Hee-na returned home. She came before the gas tank she had already prepared. He slowly turned the switch. Choi Jun-woong went to her address, according to her ID card. He arrived at her doorstep. Luckily, he found her keys in her bag. He opened the door and went inside. After turning off the gas valve, he saw Shin Hee-na lying on the floor. Choi Jun-woong had no choice but to carry her to the hospital. It's a good thing it arrived in time. Shin Hee-na woke up, and her first words were, Choi Jun-woong asked her why she wanted to commit suicide. Shin Hee-na slowly explained the reason. It turned out that she had been overweight since childhood. Her classmates also mocked her, saying she smelled like a pig. No one wanted to play with her. Unable to bear the pressure, she wanted to end her life. However, she was too overweight. She was never able to succeed. So she started inducing vomiting. Slowly, she became emaciated. Due to prolonged vomiting, she developed anorexia. Eating anything would remind her of the humiliation she had suffered. So she had to throw up. This also pushed her to the brink of collapse. I hate myself so much right now. Choi Jun-woong, after hearing her story, went outside to find Goo Ryun to help her. But Goo Ryun told him to do it alone. At first, he didn't believe in himself. But after hearing Goo Ryun tell him, just be yourself. So he decided to give it a try. He came to Shin Hee-na's bedside. He told her about his sister's story. It turned out that Choi Jun-woong's sister gained more than 30 kilograms because of studying for university entrance exams. When she went shopping for clothes, the shop owner said they didn't have her size. Therefore, her boyfriend also chose to break up with her. People around her laughed at her. Later, she even stopped eating the meals her mother prepared. Her mother told her, why should you care about what others think? Even if you're perfect, some people will still find fault and try to tear you down. And these words completely pulled her sister out of the abyss. Choi Jun-woong told her, the person who hurt you built a prison, imprisoning your past self inside. But the key is in your own hands. Choi Jun-woong took Shin Hee-na's hand and told her, your body doesn't belong to anyone else. It belongs to you. You must cherish it. After listening to Choi Jun-woong's story, Shin Hee-na seemed to understand something. She then picked up the key in her heart and rescued her past self. Soon after, she and little Fatso were eating cake and drinking milk tea. This made her very happy. It's said that when a dog is about to die, it will choose to run away from home, finding a place to wait for death. Meanwhile, Goo Ryun also received a report of someone attempting suicide, and the index has reached 99. This is unprecedented. Due to the urgency of the situation, they had to speed up to get to the designated location. Suddenly, Choi Jun-woong saw a girl walking into the middle of the road. He looked closely. It was his younger sister. He looked back at the approaching vehicles. They showed no sign of stopping. To save his sister, he jumped over the barrier. Luckily, Goo Ryun and Representative Lim saved them with their abilities. At that moment, they discovered the girl was holding a dog. Only then did Choi Jun-woong realize his sister had tried to save the dog. She hadn't been trying to kill herself. Afterwards, his sister gave the dog to Goo Ryun. Then she went back to work. Goo Ryun told them that the suicide attempt wasn't by a person, but by this little dog.
얘가요?
没想到狗也
Choi Jun-woong also took out his phone to check the map. Sure enough, the location shown was where the puppy was. Then he took the puppy to the cafe. They all said they had never seen a puppy trying to commit suicide before. To find out why the puppy wanted to kill itself, they could only find the dog's owner first. So they went to the nearby pet store to find the owner using the dog tag on its collar, but to no avail. Then they took the puppy to the vet for a checkup. The vet told them that the puppy was already 13 years old. and didn't have much time left. They should prepare themselves. Choi Jun-woong was furious. He felt that the owner had abandoned the puppy. The puppy seemed to understand what they were saying. It barked furiously at Choi Jun-woong. Since they couldn't find any clues about the puppy, there was no way to save it. So Goo Ryun sent Choi Jun-woong to the Underworld's imagery team. It turns out that whether it's a person or an animal, as long as they are nearing death, the Underworld's imagery team will first. The video montage of their lives is like their final gift. Choi Jun-woong opened the video. He saw how the dog had been abandoned and severely injured before its death. It was adopted by a child named Lim Ryung-gu. He named it DDU. DDU loved Lim Ryung-gu very much, and Lim Ryung-gu treated it like his younger brother, playing with it, walking together. That day, Lim Ryung-gu was involved in a car accident because of Do. He was left with a long scar on his arm. Do seemed very heartbroken. Soon, Lim Ryung-gu grew up, but Do remained the same size. To hide the scar from his childhood, Lim Ryung-gu got a tattoo on his arm. In the days that followed, they were very happy. They even sat together on a bench watching the sunset. Until one day, Dodo developed a tumor and needed surgery. But since he was already 13 years old, it was difficult to guarantee that there would be no accidents during the surgery. Lim Ryung-gu and his family discuss his inability to make a decision. However, Dodo overhears their conversation. Learning about his own situation, to avoid causing them trouble, he chooses to run away from home. Choi Jun-woong almost cries when he sees this. So he calls Goo Ryun and asks him to find the tattoo owner online. Sure enough, Representative Lim saw online Lim Ryung-gu's post looking for DDU. Meanwhile, Lim Ryung-gu was downcast because DDU was lost. He couldn't even muster the energy for work. After work, he went home and saw DDU's old videos, causing him to burst into tears. Suddenly, a text message came through on my phone. It was from Goo Ryun. After they confirmed their meeting place, because he was so anxious to see Dodo, he ran out the door without even putting on a coat. He arrived at the cafe. Goo Ryun asked him about the reasons behind Dodo's running away from home and attempted suicide. At first, he thought it was impossible. Suddenly, I remembered something. That phone call that day. He told Mom that if Dodo died in front of him, he wouldn't be able to live either. And Dodo, who was outside the door, overheard this conversation. To allow his owner to live on, he decided to run away from home, to end his own life. Lim Ryung-gu regretted his words. He had long since considered Dodo a member of his family. Then Goo Ryun came to the next room. She brought Dodo to Lim Ryung-gu. But when Dodo saw him, it was still a little hesitant to approach. Lim Ryung-gu expressed his longing for it. And he told Dodo, "These days without it, I've been so lonely." Dodo seemed to understand his feelings, so he slowly walked towards Lim Ryung-gu. Lim Ryung-gu also embraced Dodo. But not long after they sat down, the messengers from the escort team were coming to collect Dodo's soul. Mr. Lim told him to wait for 1 hour before they came. At first, the messenger was reluctant. Ultimately, under their coercion and intimidation, he agreed. Goo Ryun told Lim Ryung-gu that time was running out, asking him to properly see Dodo off on his final journey. Choi Jun-woong was afraid Dodo was cold, so he took out a scarf for Dodo. Representative Lim also took off his jacket. He draped it over Lim Ryung-gu. Then he carried Dodo out of the coffee shop. He came to the park they had visited before. Lim Ryung-gu held Dodo. He recounted their past. And he told it that he would live well, not to worry about him, and thank it for keeping me company for so many years. It also brought me so much joy. Watching Dodo slowly close its eyes, the pain in my heart made him unable to face reality. But Dodo could no longer hear his voice. Just like that, Dodo left this world, taking his thoughts with it. The Grim Reaper also brought Dodo's soul before Goo Ryun and the other two. Seeing Dodo's gloomy mood, Representative Lim told him that he would have many good friends there, and that Lim Ryung-gu would live well, missing him. 50 years later, Dodo still wasn't willing to be reincarnated, because he had been waiting for Lim Ryung-gu. The Jade Emperor told it that it would be reborn as a human in its next life. At this moment, a man with a tattooed arm walked in. Dodo saw him and immediately ran away. It turned out that Lim Ryung-gu also passed away 50 years later. Seeing their intimate appearance, the Jade Emperor also smiled. The girl was raped, but her father said,
뭘 잘했다고 울어? 이게 운다고 해결될 일이야?
Even her beloved brother blamed her. Why did she wear such tight clothes? He didn't understand why her family blamed her. Actually, that night, as she was preparing to go home, she happened to see her brother eating at the same restaurant. Scared, she wanted her brother to go home with her. But he refused outright. She had no choice but to walk back alone. Suddenly, a hand landed on her shoulder. She thought it was her brother. Turning around, she found she didn't recognize him. The man threatened her. "If you don't want to die, don't speak." At that moment, she was terrified. Taking advantage of the man's inattention, she pushed him away and ran off. The man chased after her relentlessly. Ultimately, the girl was caught. The man slapped her hard across the face. Then he dragged her into a secluded alley. Meanwhile, her brother was still messaging her. "Did you manage to get a ride?" But no one ever replied. "I thought she fell asleep at home." After the girl was dragged into the alley, the man continued to beat and kick her. The girl kept begging for mercy.
넌 나한테 뭐 해줘?
That's how the girl was dragged to the restroom and assaulted. The girl was on the verge of collapse, but the man didn't let her go. He told her, if she wanted to live, she should close her eyes and count to 1,000 before going out. The girl nodded. After the man left the restroom, The girl began to count. She kept counting until 683. Then she noticed the sounds outside had stopped. So she got up and prepared to escape. She opened the door, only to see the man still standing outside.
내가 눈 감고 1000까지 살려주면
Just like that, the girl was beaten again by the man. The next day, brother returned home. But he found his sister hadn't returned yet. He took out his phone and found that his sister hadn't replied to the message he sent last night. He thought his sister might have slept over at a friend's house. After he finished his shower, he found his father standing in the room. Without saying a word, he slapped him right away and accused him of not being there when his sister had her accident. At this moment, he only then learned that his sister had an accident last night. He went to the ward to visit his sister, asking her who did it. His sister told him not to call the police. She didn't want anyone to know. My brother yelled at her again. Why didn't you come home earlier? My sister also erupted. My brother grabbed her hand. At that moment, my sister saw her brother as the man who had assaulted her. This plunged her into fear again. Eventually, the girl's parents took the man to court. But the man was wealthy and influential. Another medical school graduate. Only received a 2-year sentence. And it was suspended. This plunged the girl into despair once more. Because the man had warned her that if she called the police, he would retaliate endlessly. The incident quickly fermented online. The comments all accuse her of being promiscuous. That's why she was targeted. Waves of abuse kept echoing in her mind. But her brother didn't accept the court's verdict. He held up a sign to defend his sister. After learning about this, his sister found him. She questioned her brother, asking if he wanted the whole world to know she had been violated. Also, is there any difference between him and that man? Tearing my heart apart again and again. And said cruel words to let my brother die. My brother realized something was wrong with him. After saying sorry, then he walked out of the room alone. At the same time, Goo Ryun received a notification that a girl is going to commit suicide. Strangely, her brother also wanted to commit suicide. Due to the urgency, they split into 2 groups. Goo Ryun went to the ward and found the girl wasn't there. She called Choi Jun-woong and found the girl's brother wasn't at the courthouse either. They guessed they must be at home. At this time, the girl's suicide index reached 99.
빨리.
Then the girl picked up a knife. Just as she was about to end her life, Goo Ryun and the others appeared. This prevented her from taking further action. Just then, Choi Jun-woong also discovered that the girl's brother's suicide index had reached 94. Goo Ryun told him and Representative Lim to go find the brother first. Leave it to me. After they left, Goo Ryun walked forward step by step. It turned out the girl didn't want to die. But the reason she wanted to commit suicide was that her loved ones not only didn't understand her, but also blamed her, saying it was all her fault. Even her brother said it was because she came home late. This is why she wanted to kill herself. After Goo Ryun learned about it, she showed her the scars from her suicide attempt, and said that when she tried to kill herself, she felt like there was nothing left to live for in the world. But before she died, she found many things she cherished. But it was too late. She told the girl, "You are the victim, don't be afraid. The one who should be afraid is the abuser. No one can blame you. Not even yourself. So you must live." The girl also dropped the knife from her hand. She hugged Goo Ryun tightly. Sometimes, when someone is suicidal, they only need a few words of care. But often, no one says it to themselves. Meanwhile, the perpetrator watches the news he created. Still laughing. At this time, Representative Lim uses his ability to arrive home. He hates this kind of person most, because his mother was defiled and killed. Seeing this, the man tries to call for help. Representative Lim snatched the phone. He punched him. At this time, his brother also ran over. It turned out he wanted to kill the man, and then kill himself. Representative Lim told him not to get blood on his hands. He would kill him himself. Choi Jun-woong arrived here as well. He froze the moment he opened the door. He saw Representative Lim punching the man repeatedly in the face. At this rate, the man would surely be killed. Seeing this, the girl's brother quickly pushed Choi Jun-woong out the door. He was preventing Choi Jun-woong from letting Representative Lim kill him. Choi Jun-woong understood his intentions, and he told him that disappearing wasn't the solution. "My little sister is suffering right now. You should be by her side at this moment. Don't act recklessly and seek revenge." Only now does the older brother realize his mistake. By this time, the man had been beaten to the point of being unable to stand. Just as he was about to strike, Choi Jun-woong stopped him, telling him that Grim Reapers cannot interfere in human affairs. "No, Agent Lin, move. What are you doing?" Goo Ryun suddenly appeared. She slapped Representative Lin to calm him down. Representative Lin left. Goo Ryun kicked the man directly. He'll be infertile from now on. In court, Goo Ryun, acting as the prosecutor, won justice for the girl and sentenced the man to 20 years in prison.
만 24년을 구형합니다.
After the trial, on the way to prison, a figure suddenly appeared, scaring the driver into stopping the car. After getting out of the car, they found no one. They decided to check ahead. Just then, the car's lights flickered. Then, Park Jong-gil, the Grim Reaper, appeared. It turned out the man would die of cardiac arrest in 10 minutes. But for such a despicable human being, not even worth a living creature, such a death was too easy. So, Park Jong-gil engulfed the entire car in hellfire. Let him experience the most painful death. The fire grew bigger and bigger, accompanied by the man's scream. The scum finally left this world. Park Jong-gil also left with his incredibly cool gait. The boy was practicing writing. 2 two children with wobbly eggs came over. They not only erased his writing, they also said that his mother was a filthy singer and prostitute. The boy thought they were talking nonsense. One of the children said, "Why did several older men visit your mother every night?"
동네 사람들도 이제 다 걸? 니네 엄마 참.
The boy was furious when he heard this. He immediately threw the chubby boy to the ground. He punched him in the face. He insisted that his mother was not a prostitute. But I kept thinking about last night. It turns out that last night, the boy really saw several older men looking for his mother. And he also heard.
기방에서 네 이름이
The boy shook his head in disbelief. So hearing someone say his mother was a prostitute completely confirmed his suspicions. His anger manifested itself in clenched fists. Night fell. The mother was helping the boy tidy his clothes. Suddenly, she heard a noise outside the door. She thought it was her son returning. The moment she opened the door, she froze. She saw several disreputable men leering at her. Soon after, the boy returned from outside. He saw several older men coming out of his house. They were speaking lewdly about his mother. Already angry, he lost his temper. He stormed to the door and started shouting abuse at his mother in the room. He used extremely foul language. She even says she's a mother like that. It's the greatest shame of my life. The mother heard her son's words. The pain in her heart was like a knife. If it were someone else, she could ignore it. But this is her dearest son. The son outside continued to reproach his mother, but there was no response from the room. The boy walked forward, somewhat puzzled. He peered through the crack in the door. He saw his mother, his sole companion, had hanged herself. The boy stared in disbelief. Soon, the boy grew up. He returned to the place where he and his mother had lived. Looking at the familiar scene, he remembered the happy days he had spent with his mother. But he still harbored resentment towards his mother. Just as he was about to leave, the elderly neighbor next door called out to him, learning that he still resented his mother. She told him what had happened back then. It turned out that his mother, indeed, was a courtesan. But she only performed arts, never selling her body. However, a county magistrate took a liking to her. Seeing her refusal, he directly raped her. After she became pregnant, the Ihong courtyard kicked her out. She soon gave birth to a son. Feeling he was a child of sin, she didn't feed him for several days. But when she saw the boy beckoning to her heart softened. Soon, the boy grew up. His mother cherished him above all else. But the good times didn't last. The magistrate found her again. He threatened her, saying that if she disobeyed him, he would harm her son. As a mother, her son was her absolute weakness. So she threw a cup of water in the magistrate's face and said that if anyone dared to touch her son, she would never let it go. Then she turned and left. But the damned magistrate couldn't possibly let her go. So he called a few of his men and told them to teach the woman a lesson. That's why the boy saw what he saw that night. Several men came out of the house. Upon learning the truth, Long Chio was heartbroken. She had wrongly accused her mother. She then turned her grief into anger. To avenge her mother, he secretly slipped into the magistrate's house. While he was asleep, he killed him. He then found the 3 men who had assaulted his mother years ago. He killed them all. After that, he lost all desire for life. He ultimately died surrounded by smoke. Then, the emissary from the underworld took his soul back to the netherworld to see his reincarnated mother one last time. He gave up rebirth. I chose to be a Grim Reaper. Just now. She tried to return a dress she'd worn for a week. Rowa picked it up and sniffed it. She detected the scent of perfume. And she even found a piece of chewing gum wrapper inside the dress. So she politely told her that worn clothes couldn't be returned. The woman felt that she was being arrogant. Only a big belly dares to talk back to me. Without a word, he picked up his trousers and beat Rowa's belly. But she still wasn't satisfied. The woman realized she'd caused trouble. So she ran away. Soon, Rowa was sent to the hospital due to excessive blood loss. Because she was 9 months pregnant, the doctors did everything they could to deliver the baby. But ultimately, the baby died during a difficult delivery. Back home, she blamed herself, feeling that it was her overwork that had killed her child. This led her to contemplate suicide. Meanwhile, Goo Ryun received news that Yuwa was attempting suicide. To save her, they disguised themselves as sales clerks and came to Yuwa's workplace. They quickly discovered that Yuwa appeared optimistic on the surface, but secretly suffered in private. Goo Ryun also found that her depression index reached 90, making suicide a real possibility at any moment. At this time, a regular customer came into the shop. Unaware, she thought that Rowa had returned after giving birth. But she completely failed to notice Rowa's increasingly unsightly expression. Luckily, Goo Ryun appeared in time and saved her. Hiding in the restroom, she once again recalled her sad past. After adjusting her emotions, she had just left the bathroom when that vicious woman found her again and violently pushed her to the ground. Just as the vicious woman was about to take further action, the Jade Emperor suddenly descended to the mortal realm, grabbed her hair and gave her a severe scolding. And he also said,
나 이 매장에 놓는 것만 전부 다 포장해줘요. 그리고 나 이 쓰레기 좀 치워줘. 나 시끄러워서 쇼핑을 못하게.
Choi Jun-woong heard this and pushed the woman towards the door. Goo Ryun came over and asked her why she came in person. The Jade Emperor said that he has a few days each month when he feels rather irritable, so he comes to the mortal realm for a stroll. Then he went to the front desk to pay. After buying the things, the Jade Emperor asked Choi Jun-woong to deliver these things to the children at the orphanage. It was soon time to get off work. To prevent Yuwa from committing suicide, they followed her. Suddenly, Yuwa collapsed, so they took Yuwa home. They were worried about leaving her alone, so they stayed at Yuwa's house waiting for her husband to get off work. At this time, Choi Jun-woong suddenly discovered that Yuwa's suicide index had dropped to 30. This made them quite puzzled. In order to figure out the truth, Choi Jun-woong opened the door and found Yuwa asleep. Goo Ryun suddenly realized that all this might be related to a dream. Due to the time constraint, Goo Ryun flashed to the underworld and took Mr. Lim's ID card, successfully opening the underworld security system. Thus, Goo Ryun entered Yuwa's dream. Sure enough, Yuwa in the dream was preparing formula for her child. Goo Ryun stepped forward and grabbed her. She told her it was all a dream. But how could Yuwa, who had just gotten her child, possibly want to wake up? In her mind, this was reality. Then she hid in the room, shutting the door. The next second, Goo Ryun instantly teleported to the room. This scared her witless. Goo Ryun repeatedly told her that it was all fake, that it was all in her imagination. But Goo Ryun's words were undoubtedly rubbing salt into her wounds. Meanwhile, outside the dream, Choi Jun-woong discovered that Yuwa's suicide index had reached 95%. He hurriedly tried to wake her up, but he found she had taken sleeping pills. He had no choice but to call 120 for help. Because the situation was critical, he called Representative Lin. Because Yuwa was Representative Lin's mother, reincarnated 400 years ago. Upon learning this, Representative Lin, and I've come to Yuwa's dream. She asks Goo Ryun to let her awaken her mother from her past life. But Goo Ryun tells her,
이러다 임유아 죽으면 꿀벌이랑도 인연의 실이 끊기는 거야. 그럼 진짜로
hearing Goo Ryun's words, Yuwa's heart wavers. Is this really a dream? Seeing their expressions, she knows it's a dream. But she still can't bear to leave her child. Representative Lin told her that she should only put down the child in her arms now, and wait until the child grows up in the underworld. Then she will come to find you again. Listening to Representative Lin's persuasion, she gradually let go of her resentment, and woke up from the ward. Choi Jun-woong saw Goo Ryun and they were walking towards them. He directly hugged them both in a manly, coquettish embrace. This completely disgusted them. The next day, Ro and her husband came to the beach, placing the shoes they had prepared for their child on the sand. The shoes drifted away with the waves. Ro's heart felt relieved. Before leaving, she encountered the man from her dream last night. She didn't know that the man before her was her son from 400 years ago. Lin snapped his fingers, returning Ro's past life memories. Instantly, Ro remembered everything from 400 years ago. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at Lin.
어머니 아들.
Lin also revealed that he was the grown-up Lim Ryung-gu. He deeply regretted what he had said to his mother in his past life. Ro said, however, that even if she could go back 400 years, she would still choose to give birth to him and be his mother. That, perhaps, is motherhood. No matter how a child might hurt her, she would never resent her child. After this mother and son, separated across 400 years, bid each other a final farewell, with a snap of Lin's fingers. Ro's memories are slowly fading. Although they can no longer be mother and son, their bond remains unbroken. Soon after, in the Underworld's branch office, a group of children are preparing for reincarnation. The Jade Emperor shows them a video of Ro and her husband writing their blessings on the beach.
엄마랑 아빠가 예쁘게 꽃 피우고 기다릴게. 꿀벌이가 누구지?
나야.
그래, 이제 엄마랑 아빠한테 가야겠지?
Soon after, Ro became pregnant again. This child was the same child she had lost before, Little B. This group of girls were about to be taken to be comfort women. Naive, they thought they were going to find work. Soon they realized something was wrong. One girl shouted to stop the car and wanted to go home. The Japanese soldiers made the driver stop the car, so he let the girl out of the car. But the next second, the girl was gone. Only then did they realize they had been tricked. The dead girl was abandoned in the wilderness. After arriving at the Japanese club, they were led to individual rooms. Then, they suffered unspeakable indignities. Their names will also be hung on the wall. But as soon as someone is tortured to death, their name tags will be taken down. This girl, Lee Jin-won, suffers torment every day, pushing her to the brink of collapse. Here, they are merely expendable to the Japanese. They even have to do their laundry. A girl approached Lee Jin-won. She told her that she hadn't had her period that month. Lee Jin-won knew she was pregnant. Soon, the Japanese soldiers found out. They gave her an abortion injection. Because in this place, as long as one's lower body was functional, they had to face the Japanese soldiers' abuse until their death. That evening, Lee Jin-won discovered a girl named Inchi was taking care of her compatriots. The Japanese soldiers saw this, walked into the room and threw Inchi out, thinking she was up to something. But Inchi spoke Japanese, and said she didn't want to trouble them, that she was there to help take care of her. But the Japanese soldiers simply didn't believe her. Yet she continued to care for her injured sisters, even though she was beaten every time she was caught. It was her kind actions that also infected everyone else. They decided to stick together for warmth and support. But Lee Jin-won, seeing this, still didn't dare to approach, because she would dream of the Japanese soldiers' insults to her. The torment of both her mind and body led her to contemplate suicide. Luckily, she was seen by Inchi, who wrested the sharp stick from her hand. Inchi told her not to die, because once dead, all hope would be gone. Only by living are infinite possibilities open. But this didn't change her suicidal thoughts. Until this day, she saw that Inchi's arm had been broken by the Japanese soldiers. But she wasn't very disheartened. Instead, she was quite optimistic. This also ignited her motivation to live. But the good times didn't last. That night, she saw 2 Japanese soldiers come out of Inchi's room. After the Japanese soldiers left, she hurried to Inchi's room. Inchi's stomach had been carved with a knife by them. Lee Jin-won gently wiped it for her. They didn't know when someone would come to rescue them. When would they be able to escape the clutches of the Japanese soldiers? A month later, they heard that the Japanese soldiers, in order to destroy evidence, were going to kill them all. So that night, while the Japanese soldiers were asleep, they collectively escaped. But they were still discovered by the Japanese soldiers. They hid in a concealed place, trembling with fear. At this time, In-shi suggested that she would lure them away, allowing Lee Jun-woong to lead the sisters to escape. Lee Jun-woong intended to go with her. In-shi stated that she spoke Japanese. If I'm caught, I'll say I was lost here. Then I'll leave. Soon, the Japanese soldiers discovered her. But the Japanese soldiers clearly didn't believe her, and they called for more Japanese soldiers. So, while In-shi was being beaten up, they secretly ran away. Then the Japanese soldiers executed In-shi. Lee Jun-woong escaped back to her hometown, only to find that her parents had already been murdered by the Japanese soldiers. This made her heartbroken. Having nowhere to go, she walked through the village.
어린 것이 부끄러운 줄도 모르고. 아유, 아니, 여기가 어디라고 와?
The villagers' words, sharp as daggers, made her feel more pain than the torture inflicted by the Japanese soldiers. In this way, she lives alone. I saw one of the comfort women on TV the other day, telling about their tragic past. Lee Jun-woong also found that more and more people sympathized with them. Soon Lee Jun-woong also became seriously ill and was hospitalized. And her biggest regret, just not at the moment of death, meeting In-shi who saved them in the first place. Meanwhile, a new member joined the extradition team, and she was the deceased In-shi. It turned out that after their deaths, they were extradited by the island nation's Grim Reapers. They were all heartbroken, unable to return to their own country even after death. They decided to fight the island nation's officials to the death. Just then, their country's Grim Reaper, Park Jong-gil, arrived. In a few rounds, he subdued the island nation's Grim Reaper.
그대들의 수장에게 전하라. 조선의 망자는 조선의 사자가 데려갈 것이며 비키거라.
And so, Park Jong-gil took them back to his own country. Seeing Park Jong-gil's cool side, Yoon-hee also decided to become a Grim Reaper when she grew up. Ultimately, passing all the exams, she finally got her wish. On the other hand, the Jade Emperor told Goo Ryun, this time, she needs to go with the Gongdu group. Because the person the gravely ill Lee Jun-woong wants to see is In-shi, who just joined the guiding group. Then they took In-shi to the ward. But Lee Jun-woong didn't recognize her, until In-shi revealed the pattern drawn by the Japanese soldiers. Only then did Lee Jun-woong realize that this was the benefactor she had been desperately trying to see. She thanked In-shi for everything she had done for them, but she could only watch helplessly as In-shi died. In-shi told her not to carry so much burden. Mimi, let go of everything, Mimi. She would take her to a warm spring place, Mimi. Lee Jun-woong, who had lived such a humble life, smiled at the last moment of her life, Mimi. After death, Lee Jun-woong arrived at her life review. The Jade Emperor learned of her tragic past. To fulfill her childhood dream of happiness, he allowed her and her former sisters to return to their hometown. Lee Jun-woong also transformed into a young girl at this moment. Then they went through the time portal and arrived at their hometown. They did the things that young girls enjoy doing. Smiles were on everyone's faces. There's no war here. No one looks at them strangely. Only endless joy. Today is her death anniversary, but she's not happy at all, because the cause of her death in her past life is still vivid. Choi Jun-woong also discovers her depression index has reached 100. To help Goo Ryun, I personally found the Jade Emperor to understand the situation. Seeing his sincere desire to help Goo Ryun, the Jade Emperor agreed, and he told him that he must be able to bear Goo Ryun's past pain. 400 years ago, Goo Ryun should have been awaiting marriage at home, but she always sneaked out hunting while the maidservant was asleep. She secretly went hunting, and in the woods there was a young boy also hunting. But I accidentally stepped on a venomous snake and was bitten. Goo Ryun, who was hunting, happened to see it. She rushed forward. She found that he had been bitten by a venomous snake. She untied the hairband from her head and tied it around the boy's leg to prevent the venom from spreading. After the boy woke up, he found himself in a slum. The next day, Goo Ryun caught a wild chicken for the villagers. She suddenly froze. She saw that every household had a wild chicken. These chickens were gifts from a young boy to thank the villagers. The boy's name was Park Jong-gil. He was also grateful to Goo Ryun for saving him. After they introduced themselves to each other, they went their separate ways. Goo Ryun returned home, only to be arranged into a marriage by her father. It turned out her father had arranged a childhood betrothal for her. Knowing nothing about the other party, Goo Ryun refused vehemently, so she decided to go to the other party's house herself to refuse. When she opened the door, she was instantly stunned. So the man her father wanted her to marry was Park Jong-gil. When Goo Ryun saw Park Jong-gil, a sweet smile appeared on her face. Then the two of them made plans to go shopping together. Goo Ryun came to a stall selling rouge and jewelry. Park Jong-gil noticed that the red eyeshadow suited her. He applied it to Goo Ryun's eyelids. Then, holding up a mirror, he said, Goo Ryun looked at the rouge Park Jong-gil applied for her. Very happy. At this moment, Park Jong-gil also confessed his feelings to Goo Ryun. Soon after, the two naturally got married. 10 years later, the two walked down the street again. Then a large group of soldiers came. It was a northern barbarian invasion. Park Jong-gil had no choice but to prioritize the greater good over his family. But Park Jong-gil's mother worried about her son going off to war. She felt it was all because of Goo Ryun's suggestion that Park Jong-gil chose to become a military officer. Suddenly, a large group of people burst in. Seeing them, Goo Ryun quickly urged her mother-in-law to leave, and the barbarians began their massacre. Goo Ryun ran to her room and grabbed her bow and arrows. She aimed at the enemy and fired an arrow. Luckily, Park Jong-gil had previously taught her some self-defense techniques. After killing 2 enemy soldiers, she rushed out of the room again and shot all the enemy soldiers in the courtyard. Goo Ryun sends her mother-in-law to hide in the basement. She then goes to rescue Jumadeung, the maid she grew up with. The marketplace is now like hell. The enemy soldiers kill anyone they see. They show no mercy. Her maid, Jumadeung, has also been captured. Luckily, Goo Ryun arrives in time. She kills the enemy soldiers. She told Jumadeung to wait for her here. Then she rushed out again to save others. A woman was seen being dragged away by the enemy soldiers. She raised her bow and arrow again. She shot the rope. Just as she thought the woman was saved, suddenly an arrow pierced her chest. She looked at the man on horseback. Before she could react, the rope snared her neck again. And just like that, she was arrested too. Soon, Park Jong-gil returned victorious, only to learn that his wife had been captured by the enemy. Without a word, he rode off on horseback to rescue his wife. Meanwhile, Goo Ryun didn't know where they were being taken. Suddenly, a woman tried to escape. When they discovered her, they cruelly murdered her. Goo Ryun then realized that they didn't treat her and the others as human beings. When night came and it was time to rest, Goo Ryun discovered a poisonous plant. So she secretly, while they weren't looking, poisoned their soup. Soon, they all died from the poison. Goo Ryun then escaped with everyone else. 1 hour later, Park Jong-gil arrived alone. He saw the corpses on the ground and the loosened ropes. He knew Goo Ryun had escaped. The next day, they journeyed back to their own country. Just as they were overjoyed, the Jujushi said that those who crossed the Korean border were no longer Koreans. Goo Ryun found this statement absurd. As the two were at an impasse, Park Jong-gil arrived. He used his authority to suppress the Jujushi. Years later, Goo Ryun frequently had nightmares about the past. Park Jong-gil couldn't bear to watch his wife like this. The next day, he took her to the pharmacy for medicine, but they were pointed at and whispered about. In the afternoon, they came to the river. A group of women were bathing. This river is called the Huejia River, meaning the river of restoring one's virtue, because they were captured by the enemy and forced into sexual slavery. Although they escaped, people in their own country didn't consider them clean. A mother, unable to bear the rumors, found her son. I hoped he would divorce Goo Ryun and choose a new wife. But Park Jong-gil refused. Sometime later, Goo Ryun became pregnant, but she was slandered, accused of the child being from the enemy. His mother-in-law also found Goo Ryun and gave her a dagger and said that her life was worth less than the family's reputation. She understood her mother-in-law's meaning. The next day, she and her maidservant were walking down the street when someone suddenly threw dirty water on her. They all thought that a woman who had returned home had the nerve to come back. Goo Ryun was about to argue with them when a man picked up a stone from the ground and threw it at Goo Ryun. Seeing this, the people nearby also threw vegetables and stones at them. The maidservant guarded Goo Ryun tightly, but ultimately, there were too many people throwing stones. They directly stoned the maidservant to death. Seeing that someone had died, the villagers were scared and hurriedly fled. Looking at the maidservant who had been with her since childhood, who died protecting her, the pain in her heart was like a knife twisting. Back home, she prepared to slit her wrists. Her husband stopped her. Goo Ryun didn't know how she would face the days ahead. The rumors outside were snowballing, growing larger and larger. It was worse than killing her. Her husband told her, "Doesn't my existence matter in your life? What will I do if you die?" Ultimately, Goo Ryun gave up on suicide after her husband persuaded her. She abandoned her suicide attempt. But Park Jong-gil couldn't bear to see his wife suffer from the rumors. So he killed all those who spread them. When Goo Ryun discovered all this, she felt it was all her fault. She caused her husband to lose himself. She picked up the knife her mother-in-law gave her and slit her wrists, committing suicide. Her only regret was not being able to properly say goodbye to her husband. When Park Jong-gil returned, he found his mother dealing with his wife's body. Park Jong-gil knelt before Goo Ryun. Seeing his wife's lifeless face, his heart ached as if it were being cut by a knife. After Choi Jun-woong saw Goo Ryun's tragic past life, he understood the reason why Goo Ryun didn't want to be reborn. She wanted to help those who suffered like her. At the same time, Goo Ryun received another message from someone wanting to commit suicide. The moment she opened her phone, it was discovered that it was the maidservant, Dan Hwa, who died protecting her 400 years ago. The woman had just returned home. When she found a pair of high heels at the door, she angrily pushed open the door and saw her husband laughing and chatting with her best friend. Without saying a word, she walked over and threw red wine in her husband's face. But the next second, it turned out the woman was a famous actress. Meanwhile, the Grim Reaper received a notification that the woman wanted to commit suicide. Jean Lian looked on in disbelief, because this woman was her maidservant reincarnated 400 years ago. In her past life, the maidservant died protecting her. This life, Goo Ryun decides to protect her. To find out the reason for Yu Choo-hee's suicide, they become bodyguards and come to the agency. As soon as they arrive, they see the green news about Yu Choo-hee and a man entering a hotel. But no matter how Yu Choo-hee explains, the boss just doesn't believe her. Actually, her best friend had invited her to a hotel that day. She ended up running into the vice president of a cooperating company. After exchanging greetings, they both stepped into the elevator together. Oddly enough, the vice president and she were on the same floor. As the elevator doors were about to close, a paparazzi rushed in. After the elevator opens, the two walked out side by side. The paparazzi saw them walking away. He also quickly followed out. When the two stopped in the same room, take out your phone and take photos like crazy. But when the two people below were separated, he didn't see. At this time, Lu Chushi received a call from her best friend. The other party lied, claiming she had a sudden emergency and couldn't make it. It was obvious that her best friend was framing her. She told her boss that she and the vice president had truly met by chance. But the boss still blamed her in various ways. During the evening rehearsal, she suddenly received a call from her father. Dad threatened her, saying if she didn't send him money, he would reveal all her past scandals. Then many netizens would attack her online. Then he hung up. Goo Ryun saw that she wasn't doing well, so she approached her and asked, "Do you need a break?" But Yoo insisted on performing on stage. The performance was about to begin, but she hadn't even danced for 3 seconds. Exhausted, she fainted on stage. After Goo Ryun sent her home, Yoo felt that everyone treated her like a commodity, used and then discarded. Goo Ryun told her she should shine like a star. She couldn't give up on herself. Meanwhile, her best friend and ex-boyfriend were celebrating the failure of her rehearsal today. Even worse, they contacted hackers to post a large number of malicious comments, saying she was immoral. Soon, Yoo saw these negative comments. They say it's because a chaebol took a liking to her. Otherwise, with her looks and acting skills, she'd be scraping by. A deluge of greetings swirled in her mind. Then her agency called to tell her that because of her constant scandals, her endorsements had been cancelled. She might have to pay a huge penalty. At this point, she was on the verge of a breakdown. Meanwhile, Goo Ryun and her team were reviewing the hotel security footage from the day Yoo was there. They suddenly discovered her suicide risk index had reached 97%. She was in imminent danger of taking her own life. As soon as Yoo stepped out of the hotel, she was surrounded by a throng of reporters. Luckily, Choi Jun-woong arrived just in time. They took Yoo to the car. But those malicious comments, mixed with cyberbullying, were swirling around in her head. Unable to bear it, she ran out of the car. Choi Jun-woong was just about to get out and chase after her, but was blocked by passing vehicles. Director Lim and Goo Ryun were also frantically searching for Yoo. Suddenly, Goo Ryun spotted her across the street. She ran straight into the middle of the road to kill herself. At the critical moment, Goo Ryun had no choice but to use her ability to freeze time. This prevented the tragedy. Just as she was about to go and rescue Park Jong-gil suddenly appeared. He believed that Goo Ryun and the Jade Emperor had made a pact to seal his past life memories. But Goo Ryun thought he was being unreasonable as she prepared to step forward and save Yoo.
사자의 책임도 지고 있습니다.
It turned out that not long ago, because Goo Ryun saved someone, she had signed a messenger's guarantee with him. Once signed, she had to unconditionally obey his demands. Even the Jade Emperor couldn't stop her. Goo Ryun was now also affected by the messenger's guarantee, painfully crouching on the ground. Park Jong-gil snapped his fingers. Time resumed its normal flow. Goo Ryun watched helplessly as Yoo died in front of her again. She failed to protect her in her past life, and it happened again in this life. The pain in her heart was like a knife twisting. Park Jong-gil saw Choi Jun-woong and the others. Then he disappeared. Representative Lin, to prevent Yoo from being hurt again, had no choice but to use his powers to force the car to stop. Afterwards, the police sealed off the scene. Yoo was also put on an ambulance. Goo Ryun watched as Yoo life hung in the balance. And in her anger, she blamed all the responsibility on the cyberbullies. The first person she found was her best friend. Then there's her ex-boyfriend. Next are the organizations specializing in online smear campaigns. But that wasn't enough. He also found those who were slandering Yoo online. Enraged, she was already blinded by fury. Even when Representative Lin tried to stop her, she showed no mercy. She warned him not to try and stop her. Soon, this matter reached the underworld. Because Goo Ryun misused her powers to interfere with the mortal realm, Yama's representative went to the Jade Emperor to demand her, saying they wanted to take her back to where she belonged. Take her where?
지옥 말입니다.
He is Hades, Hagen, from hell. Even the people who operate the wheel of life and death are afraid of him. And he rushed here at top speed, just to find someone from the Jade Emperor. Because Goo Ryun used his magic randomly to disrupt the order of the world, she must be taken back to hell to be punished. And the other side, Park Jong-gil, the god of death, also recovered his past life memories. What he didn't expect was the most annoying person ever. She is actually the wife I loved so much in my previous life. Soon, Hades, Hagen, found Goo Ryun. However, Goo Ryun was already prepared to accept punishment. She only hoped to give herself some time. But Hades completely disagreed. Just as he was about to act, Park Jong-gil appeared. With deep emotion, she asked Goo Ryun to save Yoo. At this time, Yoo woke up from the hospital. Looking at her face, full of wounds, she broke down. At this time, Representative Lin also discovered Yoo. His suicide index reached 100.
어서 가라고.
They had no choice but to leave Park Jong-gil behind. 400 years ago, he failed to protect Goo Ryun. This time, he vowed to protect her at all costs. As the Grim Reaper, he completely disregarded the several underworld messengers. After 7 or 8 rounds, he subdued them all. Finally, the king of the underworld made his move. He knew he was no match for the king of the underworld. Even so, he still chose to use his body to buy Goo Ryun time. Perhaps it's 400 years of regret. This time, he will absolutely not allow the tragedy to repeat itself. If you fall, get back up again. I won't let you go through that again. And so, he punched your husband in the face, again and again. But he still refused to move. Finally, the Pluto King was enraged. With one slap, he sent your husband flying. Your husbands are lying on the ground, helpless. Seeing this, the Pluto King was about to grab Goo Ryun again when Park Jong-gil mustered his last ounce of strength and grabbed the Pluto King's pants leg. Meanwhile, just as Yoo Choo-hee was about to jump off the building and commit suicide, Goo Ryun suddenly appeared.
누구야? 당신 대체 누구야?
She asked Goo Ryun to take her away. Because of the cyberbully's words, she grew tired of her longing for life. Goo Ryun told her, "Your life is your own. It shouldn't be controlled by others." Finally, after Goo Ryun's persuasion, Yoo Choo-hee gave up on suicide. Goo Ryun also thought of how she protected herself in her past life. The scene of being stoned to death by villagers. This life, Goo Ryun will absolutely not let anyone bully her again. Goo Ryun, having done everything, admitted her mistakes and accepted punishment. But the Jade Emperor told her that someone had already taken responsibility for everything. It turned out that the king of the underworld had taken Park Jong-gil away. But Hades doesn't know how protective the Jade Emperor is of his son. He insisted that his son injured his own subordinates. Now he's completely dumbfounded. The Jade Emperor, along with the heads of various departments, stated that Park Jong-gil hates Goo Ryun that much. This is common knowledge. How could he possibly let Goo Ryun go? The various departments behind him also expressed their opinions. The furious Yama King shouted. But that's not enough. The Jade Emperor said that in order to destroy the crisis team, did he fulfill the terms of the envoy's guarantee?
그렇습니다.
Goo Ryun punishing malicious commenters was also to fulfill the terms of the contract guarantee, wasn't it? Park Jong-gil was instantly stunned. Seeing the Jade Emperor's expression, I immediately understood.
예.
The Yama King was truly enraged this time. He felt he was being set up. They continuously guided Park Jong-gil into saying that he had released Goo Ryun.
그런 적 없다고 말씀드렸습니다. 아들편에게 수고를 끼치는 것이 제가 직접 데려가려 했을 뿐.
Just like that. With their back and forth. They completely manipulated the Yama King. But anyway, Park Jong-gil still fought with those from hell. The Jade Emperor magnanimously decided to punish him. He will spend 7 days in solitary confinement. The King of Hell was about to argue, but the Jade Emperor gestured for him to stop.
난 그럼 여기까지.
여기요. 회장님.
Soon after, Goo Ryun came to visit the punished Park Jong-gil. He didn't understand why Goo Ryun was hiding their relationship. Goo Ryun told him that although they were husband and wife in their past lives, the moment she committed suicide, all karmic ties were severed. Even if there had been feelings, centuries had passed. Park Jong-gil understood what she meant. He didn't want Goo Ryun to carry the burden of this. He lied, saying he saved her out of self-respect. Not because of feelings. Because he misunderstood you. A self-respect born from the foolish actions he took. Both of them hid those feelings. They knew their marriage was over. Though they couldn't continue their relationship, they could still see each other. Perhaps this is the best outcome. Soon, the Jade Emperor told Goo Ryun. Because of Choi Jun-woong's outstanding work, he decided to let him return to the mortal world early. Goo Ryun told Choi Jun-woong the news. But Choi Jun-woong wasn't very happy. Because during his time in the afterlife, he had grown attached to it. But no matter what, his own family was waiting for him to wake up. With Goo Ryun's snap of her fingers, Choi Jun-woong woke up in the hospital. His mother and sister were overjoyed. 6 months later, Choi Jun-woong successfully joined a new company. He was no longer the unsuccessful man who couldn't find a job. That day, he noticed that a colleague seemed to be acting strangely. He felt something was wrong on his way home from work. So he went back. Meanwhile, Goo Ryun and director Lim were also trying to save this man. Sure enough, the man was about to commit suicide. Luckily, Choi Jun-woong appeared and stopped him. At that moment, Goo Ryun and director Lim also arrived. They saw what was happening. Both were shocked. Finally, after Choi Jun-woong's persuasion, the man rekindled his will to live. Goo Ryun and representative Lim also smiled. At this time, the man's suicide index dropped to 30. Park Jong-gil suddenly arrived at the scene.
현장에 복귀하셨네요.
지나가던 길에 소란스러운 목.
After the man left, Choi Jun-woong also noticed the three of them. Asked them who they are. Jin Yun tells him they're his former superiors. Choi Jun-woong is completely dumbfounded. They decide to wait until Choi Jun-woong dies to make him relive his life again in the afterlife.
49년 2개월입니다.
당장이라도 구출할 수 있다니까.
아, 그 당신들 뭐 하는 사람들이냐고요?
우리 저승사자
The Grim Reaper walks